This episode of Trifles is made possible by listeners like you who support us on Patreon and Substack. To learn more, go to patreon.com/trifles or trifles.substack.com.
Welcome to Trifles, a weekly podcast about the Sherlock Holmes stories.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Yes, the beaches were copper, the pince-nez was golden, and the blaze was silver, but there are so many other details to pick apart in the stories.
Pray, be precise as to details.
You know the plots, but what about the minutiae? Have you ever stopped to wonder about the difference between Holmes's pipes? Or how often he smoked cigars versus cigarettes? Or what Egyptian cigarettes are like?
You are very inquisitive, Mr. Holmes.
It is my business to know what other people don't know.
Scott Monty and Burt Wolder will have the answers to these questions and more in Trifles.
The game's afoot.
Episode 417, Sherlock Holmes at Christmas. Well, hello and welcome to Trifles, the Sherlock Holmes podcast where we get into the minutiae of the Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Burt Wolder.
And compliments of the season to you, old boy.
Oh, and compliments of the season to you, too.
I hope you're having a jocund Yule. A festive fezziwig.
Jocund Yule. Oh, I love that. It's a great phrase. Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this is a slightly different episode of Trifles. This is our final episode of the year. It happens to fall on Christmas, and so we thought we might go out in Season 8 as appropriate. Just a reminder, if you'd like to support us here at the show, you can do that at Patreon or Substack. Just go to trifles.substack.com or patreon.com/trifles. And in both cases, you have the opportunity to give a gift of membership if you don't want to do it for yourself, or if you already are a member and you'd like to invite other people along, or maybe you'd like to hint to other people to give you the gift of membership here. Just share that with them and join the crowd here as we journey into 2025 together. We're going to have some additional bonus content for new members, or all members actually, not just new members, in Season 9. This is stuff that we've been looking for a home for, topic-wise here, that didn't necessarily rise to the occasion of a full episode. So we're going to be recording and producing those just for our paid membership in Season 9. So you won't want to miss that opportunity for some trifling trifles. Okay, well, this is a lovely way to round out the year. Bert, do you remember back in the early days when we started the I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere podcast? We would read Edgar Smith's Baker Street gas lamps, the editorials that he used to write before each issue of the BSJ.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it was a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, and we have here from the 1959 Christmas annual, which was the last annual that Edgar would live to see, his editor's gas lamp called Christmas with Sherlock Holmes. So, and this is going to be a shorter episode. I think it's just appropriate to share this, maybe remark on it a little bit, but why don't we get right to it?
Yes. I mean, for those of our listeners who don't remember or know, Edgar Wadsworth Smith was the second head of the Baker Street Irregulars. He passed away in 1960. He, was an American. He worked for General Motors. He was an editor. He was a writer. He was a publisher. He was the man who perpetuated the Baker Street Irregulars and who continued and extended and really built the Baker Street Journal. And it's, as you say, this is his gas lamp, Christmas with Sherlock Holmes, 1959. When Dr. Watson called upon Mr. Sherlock Holmes upon the second morning of Christmas in 1887, it was with the intention, doubtless deliberately calculated, of wishing compliments of the season. He was moved by sentiment and not by sentimentality. He bore no gift that we know of, and his visit, as its tardiness testifies, was one which bordered on the casual. Yet it was a visit destined to bring Watson rich fruit indeed in the form of a new adventure to share and a new tale to tell, and a succulent goose to eat.
The Blue Carbuncle is, as Christopher Morley said, a Christmas story without slush, and that where Holmes and Watson are concerned is as it should be. But one must wonder if the whole tale of this Christmas season has been told, if there was not on the festive day itself, while Watson lounged in connubial somnolence at home, a certain warmth in the rooms of Baker Street that mocked the sharp frost that had set in without, and served to put more cordial glow upon the scene than Watson was to bring it when he came. Not slush, certainly, but at least a genial thaw.
It's pleasant to think that this was so, and to visualize what may have happened when Christmas morning dawned. Holmes was up, of course, for the light comes late in those northern latitudes at the period of the winter solstice, and it is no day from childhood's sweet remembrance to lie abed and dream. There's a heavy tread upon the stair and a cheerful tapping at the door, and Mrs. Hudson enters, her arms burdened with a breakfast the like of which a Scotchwoman might have conceived. We may be sure she did not come to extend the compliments of the season. More likely, she cried in a hearty voice, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Holmes!" and chuckled as she laid before him the special treats that she'd prepared. It's not stretching the imagination too far to think that Holmes himself unbent, and that frivolous small talk came on between them with a spate of holiday in the air. And then, as the hours wore on, who knows that Wiggins did not come by to add his word of greeting, bringing a troop of irregulars in his train to seize in their grimy palms the extra shillings Holmes dispensed. Could be, too, that Porky Shinwell dropped in for a social glass, or Langdale Pike, or even Gregson and Lestrade. And as the time for more robust fare approached, is it not likely that two brothers, living so close by each other in the great city, would find it fitting to dine together on this special day, and to talk of something else but shop? It must have been for Sherlock Holmes a day of surcease and refreshment, when the troubled world, made sweeter by his presence, stood still and took refreshment too.
Then, as evening fell, there was the violin, and the dressing gown and slippers, and the consolatory pipe. The day went as it had come, in peace and contentment and good cheer. The frost had set in sharper, and the windows, those legendary windows that looked out on Baker Street, were thick with their crystals of ice. Before he went to his early bed, perhaps Holmes stood before them, contemplating the London scene he knew so well, and musing upon the day itself and the fullness of its meaning. A window is a magic breach that looks reflectively about, and stretches forth in eager reach to bring within the world without. And Christmas is a window, too, that opens on the hearts of men to let the light come shining through and make them young and glad again. Well, that's just a marvelous little piece there. A different way of considering Christmas at Baker Street. We often just focus on the Blue Carbuncle as our source of Sherlockian Christmas entertainment. We don't really give much thought to what was happening on Christmas Day itself. And that kind of real scene that Edgar sets there, whether or not the inspectors came and went, but certainly Holmes and Mycroft dining together. I love the idea of that scene.
It's interesting, isn't it, that today, so much of Sherlockian fandom has been colored over the last, 10 or 12 years since the BBC series, with a rise in today's media of things like fan fiction and extending the lives of these characters in different ways. But here, back in 1959, Edgar Smith, born, in 1894, also has the ability and love of these characters so deeply ingrained that he can put down, that he can imagine in his mind this extensive scene of what it must have been like. But also he's got the skill to put it down so nicely and briefly, much more briefly than even my boring long comment here. Does down so perfectly and briefly on the page.
And when he talks of Mycroft and Sherlock dining together and perhaps not talking about business, what do you think the two of them actually talked about?
Well, now, that's the question. There's really we know virtually nothing about their relationship except it was vaguely competitive. So it's really just completely open to speculation.
Well, I think I know. They probably dined at the Diogenes Club. Right? Let Mrs. Hudson have time with her family. The club, of course, would have been open on such a day. And as they sat there in the great members' room, they probably took note at the gifts under the tree, and so retired to the dining room and deduced what might have been in each one of those packages.
Yes, well, considering the great social nature of the members of the Diogenes Club, they must have spent quite a number of hours unwrapping little boxes of coal. That's reminiscent of the time Jeremy Irons was on Saturday Night Live, and they did a surprise birthday party for Sherlock Holmes, and he entered the rooms at Baker Street and guessed where everyone was, and then successfully guessed what every gift was inside the box before opening it. A funny little skit. Well, as our gift to you, dear listeners, all of our Patreon and Substack supporters, paid and free, are eligible for our monthly drawing here, where we give away a back issue of the Baker Street Journal. This is the final drawing of Season 8, and this will be our 12th BSJ back issue we're giving away. We'll continue with the same process next year in Season 9. So make sure you're signed up for that. Again, check the links at the show notes for Trifles and Substack. So let's pull out the big spinning prize wheel and see what we've got ahead here. Going around and around, landing on number 76, and that looks like it is Kevin McNamara. Kevin, congratulations. We'll be getting you a copy of a back issue of the Baker Street Journal in your stocking. Well, maybe your stocking is down already, but we'll be getting it to your mailbox at the very least. Excellent.
Well, thank you for being part of Trifles for Season 8. We wish you the best of what is left of 2024 and look forward to having you with us in 2025.
Yes. Well, believe me, folks, we send our compliments of the season to all of you, and we hope that 2025 is a great year for you and for your families. And believe me, that's no trifle.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Please join us again next week for another installment of Trifles. Show notes are available on SherlockHolmesPodcast.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and be sure to check out our longer show, I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, where we interview notable Sherlockians and share news of the Sherlockian world.
You take my breath away, Mr. Holmes.
Merry Christmas, Holmes.
And to you, my dear friend.